was in my second trimester of my pregnancy, and my waters went without any sort of prior knowledge that was going to happen, and I ended up delivering my son at 23 weeks. I spent 6 months in intensive care with him, and through the love and the nurture of the neonatal nurses and all the staff in the NHS, I've got my Charlie with me, and he's 12 and he's doing really well. He is a miracle. He weighed less than 500 grams. He was 455 grams at birth, and he was, he was a 23-weeker. So for him to survive, it was such a miracle. And he is an NHS miracle. And every year when we see his consultant, and every time he sees his support that he gets throughout his life at the moment, they're just so happy that he's doing so well. And it's a testament to them. It's their legacy that my son's here, and he's a joy every single day because of the National Health Service. I think our NHS is like the jewel in Britain's crown, and for it to be still as highly prized now as it was when it was Nye Bevan's dream back in the 1940s, I think just shows really how, when we speak to our values, British values, and to our values of fairness and our principles in the labour movement, we can have an everlasting change that's an impact on different generations. And I'm absolutely proud to be part of the Labour Party that formed that.
Friends, comrades, welcome to Labour Connected. I wanted to share that video about what our NHS means to me and what it has done for my family. It is our country's greatest institution and our party's greatest achievement. The NHS is our values put into practice. In these unprecedented times, we aren't able to hold our annual conference, but I was determined that we should still meet. Being elected your deputy leader is the honour and privilege of my life. And in the last 6 months, I have been humbled by the response of the Labour family to the coronavirus crisis. Our Labour councillors keeping our public services going, and our Labour members who have been working on the front line and volunteering in their communities. You are the very best of our movement. This crisis has shown who we cannot survive without. The NHS and social care staff who have put their lives on the line. The posties, bus drivers, shop workers, delivery drivers, and so many others who have kept us all safe, fed and connected. On behalf of our party and the Labour movement, I want to pay tribute to all of you. Your service and your sacrifice will never be forgotten. You have rightly been praised as heroes this year, but the truth is that you have always been heroes. You've always been the backbone of our country and of our communities. Before I became an MP, I was a home carer working nights in Stockport on poverty pay and 0 hours contract. So when I listen to the social care workers who are being paid a wage that they can't live on, I know how that feels. And when they tell me how badly they have been let down, I feel their anger. The government has left them without protective equipment, failed to provide the promised testing and discharged patients carrying the virus from hospitals into our care homes. And it is an absolute disgrace that the Prime Minister tried to blame our care workers for the spread of coronavirus in our care homes. The Health Secretary admitted he couldn't live on statutory sick pay of £94 a week. And many social care staff are casual workers who get nothing, not even that derisory amount. They are left in an appalling position, forced to choose between going to work and putting vulnerable at risk or isolating at home and not being able to pay the bills. On his very first day in office, the Prime Minister promised to fix the crisis in social care with a plan he said he'd already prepared. The coronavirus crisis has made that crisis in our social care sector even more urgent. But now it turns out that it won't even be published until next year. Well, it's time he got on with it. Show us the plan and guarantee that every social care worker will be paid at least the real living wage. Ministers have fallen over themselves to clap for our carers. But I tell them, applause does not pay the rent. It does not put food on the table. On Wednesday, the Prime Minister couldn't even say how much an average social care worker was paid. He had no idea. So I'll tell him again. The average wage for a social care worker is just £8.10 an hour. This was a moral outrage even before this pandemic, but now it is indefensible. After all of their sacrifice and hardship, we can't go back to business as usual, where the very same people who have risen to this challenge continue to be underpaid, undervalued and exploited. And we will fight to make sure that every worker earns a decent wage for their work. Fight for the nurses, midwives, hospital porters and other NHS staff who were denied a pay rise earlier this year. And we'll fight any attempt to freeze the minimum wage. And who could be better suited to rebuilding our communities and our country than the key workers who have got us through this crisis? That is why, working with our trade union movement, we are supporting key workers who want to run for office in May 2021 and beyond. You kept our country running, and now we want you to lead the recovery in every town hall and in every community. Conference over the next 3 days, we will show what we can achieve with a new leadership for our party and for our country. At this time of national crisis, we are offering the country the leadership it needs. We will act in the best interests of the British people and in our shared mission to defeat this terrible virus. And we will call this failing government out for its serial incompetence that is holding Britain back. The coronavirus crisis has changed everything for all of us and for our country and for our party. But our values haven't changed. And it is on those values of fairness and compassion that are seeing our country through this crisis. Our key workers have answered the call. Our public services have risen to the challenge. And the British people have shown the Tories beyond all doubt that Thatcher was wrong. There is such a thing as society. A society in which people come together to support each other and have each other's backs. A society in which we have all seen the power of community during this crisis. These are our values, Labour values, and they must be at the foundation of our country's recovery. Out of this crisis, we can build a better, fairer, more equal society. In 1945, out of the ruins of war, it was a Labour government that rebuilt our country, built our National Health Service, built the welfare state, and transformed Britain and the lives of the British people forever. We did it once, and we can do it again. We can show the British people a vision of a better, fairer society that Labour will deliver. My first step in politics wasn't in the Oxford Union, it was in my trade union. Not debating for bragging rights at the bar, but negotiating because our livelihoods depended on it. I know which union I'd rather be in. Because I was born in Stockport, but I was made in our movement. I never went to university, but I joined my union and I found an education and a vocation. Together, we are strong, and in the months ahead, our movement will need all of our collective strength as we fight to save jobs and protect our communities. And we will be campaigning on 3 economic priorities. Jobs, jobs, jobs. We will speak with one voice as one Labour movement. We can't let ordinary working people pay the price for this crisis. Yet if the government ends the furlough scheme with no support in place for the sectors and areas that need it, then workers and employers alike face a cliff edge, with mass unemployment just one step away. Our communities know about the human costs of mass unemployment. Our communities are still bearing the scars left by the last time a Tory government abandoned them and consigned people to managed decline. And there are workers facing another threat too: mass firing and rehiring on lower pay and worse terms, using the threat of the dole queue to pick the pockets of the very staff who have kept those companies going. So I say to companies like British Airways and British Gas, if you use our country's name, they better respect our country's values. And if you won't end fire and rehire, it's time the government stepped up and ended it for them. Last Wednesday, at Prime Minister's Questions, I faced a Prime Minister who pretends he's a man of the people, but has shown his contempt for women and the working class. As a single mum, he said my children will grow up ill-raised, ignorant and illegitimate. He only knows one approach, denying that problems exist and then blaming other people for his own incompetence. We are facing a second spike, further restrictions and the prospect of another national lockdown because of his failure and incompetence. Infections are rising, the testing system is collapsing, and the government has lost control of the virus because they have failed to deliver an effective test, track and trace system. But we've been here before. Now it is time for swift, decisive national action. And that action must be clearly communicated to the British people. With lives and livelihoods on the line, we cannot afford to be too slow again. Never has there been a Prime Minister more out of his depth and ill-equipped to the task than this Bullingdon Club blagger. He lights up Downing Street green for Grenfell and then whips Tory MPs to block the Grenfell inquiry recommendations. He claps for our carers when it suits him for a photo opportunity, but he doesn't even know what they earn and won't pay them what they deserve. He calls a COVID war cabinet meeting to allow grouse shooting when the frontline staff can't get the tests they need and people can't say goodbye to their loved ones. Yet it's always somebody else's fault. Civil servants, the public health body they voted to create in the first place, or even the public, for doing the right thing and trying to get a COVID test. And what about the other testing disaster this summer in education? Not students failing exams, exams failing students. Everyone responsible has lost their jobs except the man the Prime Minister put in charge, the Education Secretary. He's gone from private pike to general incompetence. He's denied knowing there was even a problem. Now, I don't know if he's lying or incompetent or both. But if Boris Johnson still has confidence in him, then he must be the only person in the country that does. His hero, Margaret Thatcher, once said, advisers advise, but ministers decide. Now the motto seems to be, ministers decide, but advisers resign. He'd probably make the algorithm resign if he could. But under Boris Johnson, the only thing the government advisers don't have to resign for is driving to Durham with COVID symptoms. But you know, we will offer a better alternative, a new leadership for our country. We know we have a mountain to climb to win the next general election, but we are determined to climb it. We must and we will restore people's trust in Labour as a party of government. And this work starts now, ahead of next May, the biggest set of elections we have ever fought outside of a general election. In Scotland, in Wales, in London, in local elections across England, there is so much at stake and so much on the line for our communities. It is up to us to fight against a return to austerity, to fight for the green jobs we need to meet the challenge of the climate crisis, to fight racial discrimination and show that Black lives matter. And when it comes to election time, we won't have press barons on our side or Russian oligarchs bankrolling our campaign. What we have is hundreds of thousands of people who can carry our message into their communities on the doorstep, online and in the workplace. The coronavirus crisis has changed everything. We will rethink how we organise and campaign for the times that we live in. But you know, what hasn't changed is the need for our movement rooted in the life of the communities and the people that we serve. 40 years ago, a girl named Angela was born. She was born into poverty, and grew up in a Britain that was broken, scarred by mass unemployment and hardship. The odds were stacked against her. But a Labour government changed that. The Sure Start Centre, the council house, the minimum wage and further education that Labour governments and councils built have provided, they changed that life. That is what a Labour government does. That is what our movement does. It takes a girl from a council estate with no qualifications and no prospects, and it gives her a chance, gives her a voice, makes her a trade union rep, sends her to Parliament and elects her deputy leader. Today, there will be a child being born into poverty. Under the Tories, they will grow up in a Britain that is again broken, scarred by inequality and insecurity. The odds are stacked against that child. It is the Labour Party that will change that. It is Labour in government that will change that child's life. We will deliver a better, fairer future. A future that is ours to build together.